Such soothing music for such a very volatile show. Boy, you people cannot dance. That's for sure.
That is true.
Welcome to the board meeting on Big 550 KTRS Radio, on our radio app on your phone, also at stltoday.com on the opinion page, as well as on ktrs.com. In studio, well, I should say first, John Deal via Skype from his secure bunker. Good morning, House Majority Leader John Deal.
Hey, good morning, McCraw. Good to be back.
You got it. And from the editorial page editor of the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, Tony Messenger, good morning.
Good morning. Good to be back as well.
And former Chief of Staff to Governor Holden and all-around gadfly, Jane Duker. Jane, good morning.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Charlie Dooley and Steve Stenger. Now it gets interesting because Charlie Dooley drops an attack ad on Steve Stenger saying that he was somebody who helped. What is the official?
He victimized.
He victimized women who were being used for prostitution because he was representing the pimps in a case some 15 years ago. Jane Duker, what are your thoughts on this?
Oh, this is the most sort of cowardice I've seen in a political campaign in a long time. So Steve Stenger was appointed by the court, ordered by the court to represent one of 15 defendants in a human trafficking prostitution ring case. There were lots of, obviously, lawyers, sitting judges, even the county assessor was in this case. And so these are unsavory, awful people. And Steve did an interview, KMOV actually has it on its website right now, where he commented on the evidence. As he does as a defense lawyer, commented on the evidence, and his client decides his defense. He commented on the evidence, and now they're saying that he is part of the victimization of women because he discharged his duty as an attorney appointed by the court to take this case 14 years ago. And the real ridiculousness of it. So Charlie Dooley calls this big press conference shocking. This is the name of the ad. It's shocking, and he doesn't even show up. He sends his spokesperson Linda Goldstein to go do the hit piece. I mean, it's really sad. I mean, obviously it's a desperate attack. And so obviously his poll numbers must be saying, what Stengers are saying. And so this is why it comes out. But, it has long-lasting effects. I mean, our lawyers now, if you represent, if you're a public defender now and you represent a murderer or somehow you are an accessory to murder, I mean, this is nonsense. It's beneath the belt. KMOV actually had the video where Councilman Stenger spoke, 14 years ago, and they called the ad badly misleading. I mean, I don't know when it's ever been that unequivocal that a news outlet would have to come out and say badly misleading. And so, this is where we're at. We're 3 weeks out, and desperate people do desperate things.
Tony Messenger?
What's bothersome to me, and first of all, let's point out to our leaders, or our listeners, and I think most of them know, Jane is a supporter of Steve.
Absolutely.
And
I am biased in that way.
Just get that out there. But
Yeah, I know. I'm so subtle.
What's interesting about the timing of the ad is it comes the day that Judge Ronnie White is confirmed to the federal bench. Ronnie White wasn't confirmed to the federal bench when he was first nominated because of similar sort of soft-on-crime attacks by certain Missouri Republicans.
He's a public defender.
And this is the same sort of attack that is being used against some of President Obama's nominees because in their work as public defenders, they defended bad people. This is the same sort of attack that we see on the front page today against Bob Ramsey, the man who just freed Mark Woodworth, the Chillicothe man who was falsely accused of murder and convicted twice. I mean, defense attorneys are a massively important part of our justice system, of our form of government, and it's very disappointing. I happen to hate negative ads. I have a bias against negative ads, period. And so that let me just start with that. But I think it's an offensive ad. I think it's an ad that Charlie should be embarrassed by. I think it's an ad that the supporters of Mayor Francis Slay, who are backing Charlie, who probably helped on this, should be embarrassed by. I just think it's a below the belt sort of thing that doesn't belong in politics, and it doesn't belong in the politics of a liberal Democrat ripping on public defenders and making it harder for them to do their jobs. That's what offends me.
But before we go to John Deal, John, hold your thought for just a second.
Well, I'm trying.
I know. I'll give you plenty of time. I just want to ask this question. Mm-hmm. So in the ad, Steve Stanger is quoted as saying, it's a lifestyle they choose, i.e., the prostitutes. So,
well, that's what they're complaining about,
right? So they're saying
Let me answer that.
I know. So he was defending his clients and saying, "Hey, the prostitutes, it's a lifestyle they choose." That's the crux of the ad and the crux of the criticism, Jane Duker.
But if you look at the video that's on KMOV, it specifically says the cross-examination and the evidence shows. I mean, if his client says this is my defense, it's a horrible defense. It's a nasty, awful defense. But if your client says the defense is, these women, chose this and here's the evidence, and he commented on the evidence. He didn't say, I believe this. He said the evidence, the cross-examination shows. And so he commented on what the evidence was. I mean, that's, he doesn't really have much of a choice in that regard. And to say that he somehow believed it, so you believe everything that you've ever said in court, I mean, that's just not true. And it would, our system of justice would fall under if everybody was held, if every lawyer said, oh, you have to believe everything your client tells you. It doesn't work.
John Deal, the floor is yours.
My turn. Jane truly can't believe what she's saying right now. I mean,
I can. I mean, I don't know. How many cases have you tried, John?
Talk about a war on women. Okay, here's a guy that comes in, granted, he had no choice on whether or not to take the case.
Absolutely.
But he certainly has a choice, and a choice as a lawyer, whether or not he goes in the Post-Dispatch and publicly bashes and victimizes 13-year-old girls.
He didn't do that, though. That's false. You didn't even look at the video. It's false.
There's something called no comment. And I know that camp is trying to say, well, gee, Jake Zimmerman did it too. Mm-hmm. Let me read Jake Zimmerman's quote to you from the Post-Dispatch yesterday. Mm-hmm. He said, I played a minor role in creating and writing an appellate brief. Okay, like Steve, my law firm was appointed by the court, and I had no choice whether or not to take this case. Unlike Steve, I know that underage prostitution is not a lifestyle choice, but that these women were victims of a heinous crime. I believe it's possible to practice law while remaining ethical, respectful, and true to your core values.
Okay, well, let me just tell you about...
Hold on, let Deal finish. Go ahead, John.
So I mean, this is just, I mean, come on. I mean, same with Tony. If this were a Republican that said something like that, if I came out one of my campaigns or Tim Jones or anybody else and said, well, I made this comment about underage victims of prostitution, okay, to say, oh, well, you're just a lawyer doing your job. No, there's a difference between what you do in the courtroom and what you get in the Post-Dispatch and publicly bash teenage girls saying they chose to be enslaved and put into prostitution. It's outrageous. He ought to apologize. And he had a really bad day yesterday because when it also came down, his first reaction was, well, gosh, let me think about that, and I'll have a response to you within a day. And then later on the day, he couldn't remember whether or not he changed his position on abortion when he ran as a pro-life conservative Democrat when he was running against a Republican 6 years ago and said, hey, I got to go back and read my campaign materials to see whether or not I've changed my position on abortion in the past couple months. So this guy, while there are definitely changes that need to be made in the county, this guy's shown he's not ready for prime time.
Jane Duker.
Okay, first of all, Jake Zimmerman was not appointed. He chose to be on that case.
His law firm was appointed.
No, that is false. Lawyers are appointed. James Irwin at Thompson Coburn was the appointed lawyer. He tried the case. Jake added himself to the appeal. So, A, his statement is not true in that regard. And do you want me to read what he wrote in his brief about a 13-year-old, 16-year-old, and 17-year-old's testimony when he said, at best, the evidence shows that my client was part of a small prostitution ring. So small prostitution rings are okay, just not the big ones. So if you want to talk about being held to your words in a brief in a legal case, that goes both ways. And the only countywide person that is defending Charlie Dooley is Jake Zimmerman. But somehow him putting that small prostitution rings are okay in a brief is somehow less slimy than Steve Stenger, who actually was a better lawyer and tried the case. So, A. B, with regard to abortion, he has been endorsed by Planned Parenthood. He is specific about his position. He is pro-choice. He has said it. Senator Jean Carnahan, Barb Fraser, and Planned Parenthood, who are in a better position to determine his Democratic credentials than you or Rick Stream. And I know that you want to run against Charlie Dooley, and I understand why you, like the mayor, want to prop him up. Yeah, and I know, and I understand.
He was a pro-life Democrat when he ran against John Campese.
No, you don't even know.
Was he or wasn't he?
No, he wasn't.
Tony Messenger.
That's what his campaign material said.
There's none of those have even attribution on them.
Tony Messenger.
I want to briefly blow heads up and do my once a show agreement with John Deal. We had Steve Stenger in for an editorial board meeting recently, and I'm going to agree with John that Steve's inability to stake out clear positions is problematic for him. That being said, John's completely wrong when he said if this were a Republican attorney in a similar situation that I would be personally or that the newspaper would be attacking him. Defense attorneys are a huge, important part of the justice system. On the editorial page, we have a long-standing argument with the state legislature over properly funding public defenders. This idea that he's a Republican or a Democrat or whatever in a defense attorney case is just wrong, and that's why the ad just. It just offends me. It's below the belt.
But Tony, there's a difference though between defending a client and what you have or don't have to put in a filing or say on cross-examination versus getting in an interview with the Post-Dispatch and saying that this guy.
I agree, John. I agree.
This guy cannot truly believe that it's okay that a 13-year-old girls who were kidnapped.
No, and I don't think he does believe that. And I don't think that I don't think that Charlie Dooley or Jake Zimmerman believe that he believes that.
Exactly.
It's all part of the campaign stuff. You are correct that there is a difference between what you have to say in court as a public defender and what you say in the court of public opinion. But James made clear that the actual full quote, I wasn't there 14 years ago, the actual full quote is him repeating the evidence from the case. And you know what? I don't know the circumstances of what his client was asking him to do, but I want my public defender to defend me. And part of being a good lawyer is often trying to win that court of public opinion because you're trying to seed the jury pool. I'm not going to judge what a public defender used in court as to whether or not Steve Stenger is appropriate or inappropriate for county executive race.
Girls made a lifestyle choice. Look at what has the guy said over the past 24 hours? Has he strongly condemned?
Yeah, he's gone up on television. Why don't you go ahead and go? He did an ad already on television saying that he was appointed. I mean, obviously.
Well, hold on a second. Has he apologized for that comment?
He's not going to apologize.
Okay.
He's not. He doesn't have to. He didn't do anything wrong. He's not going to apologize. Charlie Dooley ought to be apologizing.
But to say, hey, I was wrong. Obviously, the jury found they were not enslaved.
Well, absolutely. He said that. He goes, the guy went to prison. He was an awful person. He committed deplorable conduct.
He could say, my evidence was wrong. And this was wrong.
Well, he already said that. He said the guy is a deplorable person who went to prison. The defense didn't work. He gets it, but he had to say something. And I mean, again, Monday make I don't know how many criminal cases you've tried, John, but it's it's not that easy when you have a guy who is part of a prostitution ring. You got to defend him.
All right. Well, I guess we've sort of brought it this Thursday morning.
Amen. What's next?
Restraining orders all the way around.
That's Jane.
What's next?
That's Jane Duker here in studio. John Deal is via Skype. Good thing he's out of the room. No, it's a great exchange. And then Tony Messenger, editorial page editor. John Deal, of course, House Majority Leader. Board meeting in session on the Big